Hey, it's Jared. In this video, we're taking a look at the Bluetti AC180. In one of my recent videos, I put together kind of micro PC setup here, and in that video, I was actually running it off of the Bluetti 180, which is not very impressive. A small PC like this doesn't really take up much power. As you can see, I think at idle, sometimes it doesn't even register. But we're gonna put this thing to the test. What actually can this power? Can it sustain these devices for at least a few seconds? We've got lots of power here. This actually puts out up to 1800 watts of AC current. And so that's a lot to run your larger devices for a period of time. Obviously at 1800 watts, I think you're probably gonna get maybe about an hour of runtime out of the battery here. But this is something that can also be hooked up to solar and can be solar charged as well. And so depending on how much solar you've got going into it, you could expand the length of the charge cycle there. So let's actually just put things to the test. I'm going to go ahead and run a GPU benchmark on this little guy, and that's going to ramp things up a little bit here. You can see we're getting like 40 or so as far as the watts. Let's plug in a lamp and turn that on. That's not super impressive either because that just bumps things up a bit more. But a vacuum, on the other hand, is probably going to really use some power. So let's go ahead and plug that in and turn the vacuum on. It's going to be hard to hear me. And things kind of blipped there for a second. But as you can see now, we're up near 1,000 watts of continuous. The light is maybe flickering just a little bit. Obviously, probably not the right kind of light bulb to be doing something like this. But at 1,000 watts, we can also put my phone on top here because it supports wireless charging. And so now we're wirelessly charging my phone. So let's turn that off because that's kind of annoying. The fan kicked on a little bit here, and there's also an indicator you might have saw come on that shows that the fan is running. A device like this is super useful because it can run a lot of things when you need it to run them. This can sustain running a refrigerator for a long time because most refrigerators are probably going to operate somewhere between the 200 and 500 watt range, depending on the size of the refrigerator. And you could run a refrigerator off of this thing for quite some time. So if you live in an area where you get power outages and things like that, something like this can sustain running those things. I use this quite often because when I'm out in the field doing photo and video work, I need a power source that is more powerful than what my truck puts out. My truck actually has a built-in AC adapter, and I could plug AC devices in, but it has, I'd say on a good day, maybe 400 watts. And when I'm charging large drone batteries and stuff like that, that pulls more wattage than what my truck has to offer. And so a device like this gives me the possibility of charging those larger drone batteries without being somewhere where electricity can be used from shore power, essentially. A device like this is great for those reasons. As you can see, it has 4 AC ports on the front of it, supporting up to 1,800 watts continuous. That's a lot. You could run something like a vacuum for over an hour easily off of something like this if you needed to. This summer we traveled for a month and I had a small air conditioning unit running off of the solar in our trailer, not this particular device. But a portable air conditioning unit is probably going to take up between 600 and 800 watts. This could run something like that for a few hours easily. A space heater that's going to use somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 watts. Something like this could run that for an hour, enough to get a small space up to a good temperature in the winter. This is a great fail-safe device for those situations. You can see that it also has multiple USB ports for charging and a USB-C type port here as well. And then on this end, it has an accessory port that you can use for plugging in your own USB type devices. So you can go even beyond the amount of ports that it has on the front here. Think about camping for an extended period of time and needing to keep your mobile devices charged up. A battery this big could charge your iPhone, your iPad, and even cameras multiple times on end over the course of a week, even charging other people's, not even having to dip into the AC ports, being able to do that across these high power USB ports here. Up here on the top corner is an input for solar charging. It comes with an adapter for that adapts to solar panels, which you can get. I think Bluetti makes those. There's a variety of other solar panels, also portable solar panels that you can get, ranging between like low 50 watts up to several hundred watts. Something like this, if you wanted to keep it charged relatively well throughout the day and you are drawing a good amount of energy from it, you're gonna need to put at least 200 watts of solar into this to keep it charged. Think about it this way. If you're taking out like say 400 watts of solar, in order to keep the battery at 100%, you're going to have to put in at least 400 watts of solar. From my experiences and most other people, a solar panel that is rated for say 200 watts is not always going to be putting out 200 watts of power back into your device, because that has to be in ideal conditions that a solar panel can put out the rated wattage. On average, I would account for a solar panel over the course of a day putting out half of what it's rated for because of the angle of the sun. Unless you're going to be manually following the sun with that solar panel and there's no clouds in the sky and the solar panel isn't getting hotter than it should, which lowers its performance as well. There's lots of things to factor in there. But as far as this Bluetti device goes, I've always wanted to try out a device from Bluetti because they've been putting out some impressive devices. I like how compact this is with the handles built in, very portable and easy to move around, where a lot of the other devices either don't have handles or they're larger for this output size, or there's something else that it's missing. And on top of that, this has wireless charging. I'm still wirelessly charging my phone on top of this device here, which is just absolutely fantastic. So we could press the button at any time to see how much wattage we're consuming. We're consuming about 30 watts charging the phone, running this lamp, and running a little PC, which this device could do forever. It gives us an estimate of output here of over 21 hours actually. So over 20 hours it could run these devices. And so think about that. That is a solid whole day running devices that are, maybe around 100 watts total on output, which is a very long time. Over on this side, you have your AC input, which is where you plug in the power to charge this device from shore power. So before you leave on a trip or something like that, you would plug it in, charge this up to 100%, and then bring that charging cable with you in case you have an opportunity to plug in and top this guy off. It also has a circuit breaker protector over here on the side for the 125 volt or 125 volt AC. Should you pop that breaker because you overtaxed it, it's going to pop the breaker rather than damage the device. And then there's also a ground here as well. If you're running larger devices that have a 3-prong ground, it's probably wise to actually ground this device as well. It's simple to do that. You could simply attach a cable to the end of this. It actually comes with one, and then you can ground that to something like a water faucet that goes down into the ground, or put a long spike into the ground just so that it has somewhere to discharge that extra energy. This is cool because previously I had a device from EcoFlow which puts out a fraction of the amount of energy that this does, and it's not really too much smaller than this device. EcoFlow's devices are fantastic as well, but the device that I have, a few years old now, these manufacturers like Bluetti taking the technology and making their devices smaller so that they're more portable and easier to use. So my experiences with this device has been great. I might do a direct comparison if that's something that you're interested in the Bluetti versus other manufacturers, because a lot of people are asking, especially after I did my last EcoFlow video, what do you think of Bluetti? What do you think of Jackery and all of the other device manufacturers out there? And what I think it really comes down to is the form factor of the device. Like, is the form factor something that's going to be useful however you're utilizing this device in your life? Like, I like these handles. It makes it really easy for me to carry it and move it in and out of my vehicle or in and out of our travel trailer because the handles are nice. Its smaller form factor is nice as well. It doesn't take up a lot of room. Because it's 1800 watts, it has plug-in capabilities for 4 devices, as well as a whole handful of USB devices. That means I could support my entire family off of this one device, charging our phones, our tablets, and all of that stuff, should we need to utilize this, because we didn't have an alternative source of power. So just to recap, the things to consider when purchasing a device, regardless of what manufacturer it comes from, is make sure that you're ordering something that comes from a company that's reputable, because the batteries that are inside of these devices are lithium batteries, and you want lithium batteries from a reputable company that you know is not using cheap lithium that could cause a fire hazard, because you've got a lot going on inside of a small box like this. And with outside temperatures influencing how hot this gets, combined with the amount of heat that it's going to generate on its own, you need a device that's reputable from a company that builds something that's going to handle its own in those situations. As far as output wattage, most people for most use cases are not going to need 1800 watts of output. But with these devices, the output increases with the battery size as well. So if you buy a device that has a larger battery, which means it's going to last longer, then you're also going to get the output wattage as well. It does not mean that you have to use that wattage. As you saw here, I'm not using that much wattage right now, 30 watts or so on this device being connected to the lamp in the PC, and only using larger amounts of energy when something is turned on, like the vacuum. So a device like this is not going to burn through energy just sitting at idle. It's actually going to last a lot longer because of the bigger batteries and the way that it manages the electricity that's actually being utilized. So I opted for a device of this size so that I don't have to recharge it as often. Most of the time, I'm probably never going to be using more than 600 watts on this device, and that's only if I'm charging one of my larger drones or I need to plug something in for a short period of time that draws a lot of energy. Most of the time, it's going to be for things like charging smaller cameras, charging cell phones, stuff like that, where I don't want to occupy other ports on something like my vehicle that doesn't put out a lot of electricity, and I just want something that I can move around and we don't have to be locked to one position as well. So I've got links to this Bluetti in the description below, as well as a few of the other sizes. Definitely check them out. My experiences with the Bluetti so far has been great. Haven't had any issues with it. Of course, the EcoFlow that I've had for a few years now, I haven't had any issues with that one either, other than the fact that I just wish that it had a bigger battery and more output. Hence the Bluetti. So let me know if you have any questions down in the comment section below. I know that I'm one of many people talking about these types of devices on YouTube, but perhaps I mentioned a use case that you related to. Definitely ask about that in the comment section. Give this video a like and subscribe to be notified when I put out new videos, and we'll see you back in another one soon. Take care.